This is the City of Waupaca's City Plan Commission meeting.
All right, welcome everybody to tonight's City Planning Commission meeting. We actually have a public hearing that we need to take care of first, and so we'll begin with that, and I call that meeting to order, the public hearing to order. In attendance, we have Commissioners Fair, Barons, Mayor Smith, and Keeland, and then we have staff, Andrew Dane. And the purpose of this public hearing is just to rezone in the city of Waupaca, Michigan Street and Harding Street, which will be done in an ordinance format, ordinance number 02-2020. And this all has to do with the purchase. Did I say your name, Eric, too? I'm sorry. Okay, and Commissioner Olson. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. And so, I mean, this is all because of the city purchasing the Hoppecorn Field property and planning ahead for the Public Works facility. And we got some roads out there that we didn't even know we had out there. So we're just trying to clean it up. That's all that's happening here. So with that, if there's anybody in the audience that would like to give testimony in favor of the rezone, please step up to the podium, give your name and address for the record. Keep your discussion to 3 minutes or less. Anybody that would like to give testimony in favor of? I think, Commissioners, you all received a letter via email from Wes Zuby, who is in favor of this, so I'll just say that at this time. And I think that's the only correspondence we did actually receive. Hearing no testimony in favor, I'll take testimony in opposition. Any testimony in opposition of the rezoning? I declare this hearing closed at 5:18 p.m. And let's go right into the City Planning Commission meeting then. We have an agenda, same people are in attendance that were at the public hearing for the people that are taking notes here for us. You have an agenda in front of you. I don't think there's any additions to that agenda, so we just need a motion to approve.
Move to approve. Or second.
Motion by Fair, second by Keelan, that we approve the agenda as printed.
It was actually Eric.
Olson, geez, Eric, are you here tonight? I'm sorry. Olson, second by Keelan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carried. I guess I could pick my head up and look too. Okay, then you have some minutes. We just had a January 8th, 2020 meeting, and those minutes are in your packet. We just need to get a motion to approve those, to place them on file.
So moved.
Motion by Barrett.
Second.
Second by Fair, that we approve the minutes of the last month's meeting. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against. Motion carried. So we got a couple of action items tonight. One is the rezoning of City of Waupaca, Michigan Street and Harding Street, and this is going to be recommended to council, of course, as an ordinance form. And Justin, you're ready to?
I'll take it. Yes,
Thank
the
you.
rezone shown on page 4 of your plan commission packet gives a description of rezoning the property formerly known as Hoppecorn Field. Included in that is the current Lakeman Field and then also the current water department garage. That is all currently zoned as resource conservation. The rezone in this ordinance will make that into our PUL, or Public Facility and Utility Lands District. Now that's our most recent, our newest zoning, and it's to facilitate public facilities. That ordinance, the ordinance to make the change is on sheet 6, ordinance 02-2020. And then also, then the zoning ordinance itself is on sheet 16, defining what that zone is. In both Lakeland Field, future public works garage fit within both of these zoning classifications. And it's something we'll do in the future as we update our facilities within the city and other entities. There's a zoning map that pretty much sums it up. You can see the lines, the resource conservation. So that being said, this is a recommendation moving on to council to rezone this entire property outlined in blue here on the screen to that PUL or public facilities zoning classification.
Justin, looking at the map, why is Michigan Street even mentioned here? It doesn't look to me like there's anything that's changed or vacated, or is it because of the width that has to be changed?
No, the street itself is not being changed, and we received that question during the week. Was well, what it was just confusing. We're not changing anything with the streets. It was just a description of that property.
Oh, okay.
I think legally we can't call it Habercorn Field anymore. I don't, you know what I mean? It's not on the legal property name. So it should just say vacant property at Michigan Street and Harding Street.
Okay.
Is probably what it should say.
Yeah, gotcha.
I had a question on the map also. It looks like the property line cuts right through the water building. And does the portion on the south side of the building have to be rezoned also to PUL? That is that part that's adjacent to Harding Street?
Well, first question, you're correct. The line does cut the building in half. Second question, no, that's going to stay right away. So Harding Street right away is going to remain there. The future facility plan is going to include knocking down Water Street Garage. So that will be cleaned up here in the near future. And then we will have the gate going into the facility basically just utilize the Harding Street right away. So I was going to get into that a little bit more on the site plan review.
Is there a reason why I'm looking at the map that just has kind of the general in black and white, and then on the overhead, that the parcels in blue are set up such, are there really 3 different parcels?
There's actually 2 parcels. Lakeman Field and the Water Garage are 1 parcel,
Okay,
which is an oddity.
because they're separated. They don't have any contiguous boundaries.
That's true. So we're cleaning that up. Also with that, you have a survey map that's in draft form there. We have an official one that's going to be recorded here shortly that will clean up those lines and make Lakeman Field its own parcel, and then Habercorn Field / the Water Garage 1 contiguous chunk as well.
Okay, all zoned the same.
All zoned the same, 2 separate parcels.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? So what we're doing here is we are just recommending this ordinance to the city council, and this ordinance has to do with just rezoning the property. So if you are okay with that, then we would need a motion to recommend to council ordinance number 02/2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Keelan, second by Barrett, that we recommend to council ordinance number 02/2020, which is the rezoning of properties, Habercorn Field, Lakeman Field, and the Water Department. Any discussion?
Justin, I'm assuming that, that this fits into our master plan, whatever, in terms of land use. Is there anything else in the city that's resource conservation district?
Well, you got a bunch right there.
Yeah. Yeah, around to the north and west, there's some there. We'd have to pull up the comp plan.
Well, no, I'm just
zoning
curious.
And see.
It's not by itself. I mean, we have quite a few.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's around. It's around
Yeah.
the city.
Okay.
And resource conservation does not allow any buildings to be, any structures
Jesus.
to put up on it. So we need to change it.
Oh,
But for the intentions of the city as a whole, those areas would then remain wooded or a park. So we maintain some green space in the city.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Next up, we have the site plan review. And I'm assuming this site plan review will include keeping that end zone where I scored my only touchdown in my high school career.
North one or the south one?
Was that when you were an official, or?
Yeah, I grabbed the football out of his arm.
Okay, so page 18 of the Plan Commission packet is the front-end report for site plan review, and this would be for the salt shed that we want to build out there now at the same property. Basically, phase one of the entire facility and the build. Kind of have a quick description of what the zoning requirements are, such as the setbacks. It's quite a large setback, which is good. We're going to, in the future, plan for some landscaping out there, buffer. I mean, make it look nice. It's our facility. We want that to be looking nice, and then also to be a good neighbor. A couple next pages just kind of give you details and overview of the build itself. The survey, as Pat had alluded to earlier, is on sheet 21, showing you how the land will be divided up. So again, Habercorn Field and Water Garage will become one plot of land. I got some pictures in there showing where we're going to put this salt shed. Right now it's all snow covered, but in the old impound area right next to the current Water Garage. And then 26 is probably the best sheet to look at. This is our preliminary plan of our future facility. You can see Michigan Street on the very bottom of the page, Harding Street coming up past Peterson, Drive Peterson there. And in the orange are the future buildings. The building in the, I guess on the far east side is our salt storage building, like I said, in the old impound area. So that is what this site plan review is for right now, is to build that salt shed, which we want to get going right now because with the county moving out of town, we've lost a local source of salt is what we want. Future, you can see the layout there. Things will probably change a little bit as we move forward, but this is the general layout. We'd have a parking lot up near the front, near the Michigan Street, have a landscaping buffer in between the street and our parking lot, and then have the major building with offices up front, the garage, shop in the back, cold storage behind that, and you can see the circulation of that. What would be expected is the trucks, the guys, the crews would come through the main fence entrance on Harding Street and circle around through into the building and then park and do whatever. That's, the main operations of the future facility. But this request right now is just for this salt shed here. And that's about it. So we're going to put up that building. We'll put some pavement in there. And away we go to battle the snow and ice events that we have here in the future. Following that is the detailed design plans. These are already out to bid. We already have a contractor on board, so he's chomping at the bit to get moving. We'd like to try and accommodate that as much as we can because once summer hits, they're busy. Followed that by calculations, which are pretty complex. I wouldn't expect you guys to read that. So we can just kind of float on through that and that. Oh, and then one last thing, I have my past memos to council in this packet, just showing what's happened in the past as far as design, bid, and now we have a contractor on board. So now we just need to clean up this last zoning issue, and then we can break ground and get started with our new salt shed.
Okay, so go back to the actual action that we have tonight has to do with the site plan review, and it's only for the salt shed part of this, even though you're showing the whole.
Showing the whole thing, giving you a review, yeah.
Okay.
It's just for the salt shed. We don't have good enough plans to show you what we're going to do with the future main facility.
Okay.
I see on the not contract, but the information you gave that they are hoping to get started on the 1st of March. That's still, is that still legit?
That's still legit. Actually, they want to get going sooner.
You got to go to council with the,
But yeah,
Yeah.
the timeline we have right here accommodates that. But of course, they'd like to get started sooner than, the sooner the better for them. But we are basically following what we always do with zoning. We have to hold ourselves accountable too.
okay.
So the city's gonna have to buy me a tablet with more memory if you're gonna keep giving us this detail of stuff out here.
Well, send along a calculus.
Right. Okay, so we're looking for a motion to, here we go again. This is
Approval
approval tonight?
of the site plan.
Okay, so we don't have to recommend it, it's
Nope.
approval. Okay.
So Justin, just so I'm kind of clear, it's obviously the salt shed, but how much, is anything going to have to be done in terms of the roadway and whatnot to get to that before, as part of this project? Are they going to just use what existing is
We'll use the existing pavement on Harding Street.
right now?
Yes. We'll add some pavement. Here, let me pull it up if I can. What sheet was that? Here it is. This spot right there, we'll add that pavement, and that'll just, existing pavement is here.
Right.
So it'll allow for the trucks to move in and out, the front end loader to load up the trucks.
And the existing building that's right adjacent, how long is that going to be standing? I mean, is that kind of the next to go then?
The Water Street garage?
Yeah.
That can't be taken down until we give them a new home, so.
It's got to stay for a while.
It's got to stay for a while. It'll probably get knocked down the same time this is going up or near the end of this thing being up.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the site plan.
I'll second.
Motion by Olson, second by Keelan, that we approve the site plan for the salt shed building. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. All right. So, next up, we have a discussion on the comprehensive plan and the zoning code update. Is, Andrew, are you gonna?
I'm going to try to walk us through that.
Okay, awesome.
I did not, thought I would spare you another PowerPoint presentation since I think we have like 3 or 4 of those in a row. So, just wanted to give you a little update and then just have a little conversation, hopefully get a little bit of input from you guys. This memo that I sent, so just first in terms of an update, we closed the survey.
Excuse me, Andrew, would you use the
Oh,
microphone?
yeah, I'm
please?
sorry. Thank you, Alan. So just for a little update, we closed the survey. We ended up with 396 respondents, I believe, which I thought was pretty good. But about half indicated they're residents of the city of Waupaca. About 43% indicated they're residents of neighboring towns. Quite a few were 33% were homeowners or landowners. There was just 6% were renters. And so, which is pretty typical. It's oftentimes you kind of skews in that direction. So we posted the results of this up on the website, and I'm kind of going through right now trying to make some sense of some of the open-ended comments in there. So I've kind of tabulated and gone through and kind of sorted and organized some of these open-ended comments. And then I've kind of taken the results of the survey, the results of the visioning workshop we did on January 6th at the Danes home. We've also done 2 focus groups. We did Aaron and I facilitated a focus group with some 6 or 7 businesses in town. as well as a focus group with community partners, so people from school, the Theta Care, economic development, the chamber. So we did a couple different arts and culture network. So we've done a couple focus groups as well. And so I've tried to distill that down into some of the key, in this memo, I tried to distill that down into a set of key issues and opportunities facing the issue over the next facing the city over the next 10 to 20 years. And then I put together kind of a set of draft goals on the second page of that memo. The other thing I think I sent you was a little, some trends. I had pulled together some data, some information that I sent in kind of a trends report. I think we've gone over quite a bit of that already, but if there's anything that jumps out, certainly let me know. So maybe what we could do is just kind of walk through the survey real quick, and then I'd like to just have a discussion on this memo. I'd like to kind of get your input if you feel like we're going in the right direction on some of these goals, or if I'm veering off into left field or right field. The responses, I should also mention, so most of the respondents here were 19 to 40 or 41 to 65. Is kind of, we're going to do a targeted, we have some questions that were targeted in here that we're going to get out to the students. So I'm working with Aaron to do that, so we don't have the student feedback yet, which is why that under 18 is empty. It was somewhat interesting that we actually had, 8% of folks indicated they're 65 or older. So I thought that was kind of interesting because we're talking about aging demographic, and oftentimes when you do these surveys, it skews more on that side. But here, maybe because we did most of it electronically, but we had a little less participation with older people. But I thought in terms of who responded, business owners, homeowners, people in and out of the city, was a kind of a nice mix. That first question, so I kind of jumped to question 6. If you want to flip through on the screen, we asked people to check the box if they agreed with the statement. About 70% of the people said they feel welcome and a part of this community. A little less than that, 65% said it was a good place to raise kids. 47% said it was a good place to retire. Only 36% said it was heading in the right direction, which was a little, was probably maybe somewhat, was a little surprising to me, quite honestly. But I think with a lot of the comments, I think that with the closing of the Kmart and the Shopko and the Pizza Hut, I think those are, I know this keeps coming up and people bring it up as an issue, but I think that's probably having a real big impact on people's perceptions. And that came out in the comments when we asked people if they indicated the city's not headed in the right direction, please explain why. A lot of the comments in here had to do with the lack of retail. The drugs problem came up, repeatedly. Probably no big surprises here. Some of the perceptions regarding the city being business friendly or less than business friendly came up as a key issue. But there were also some comments in here, the folks that said they felt it was going in the right direction. So I guess, and some of those issues will come out in the memo when we'll go over, we can discuss those in more depth. So we had, then there was kind of a set of questions that asked what the top 3 concerns you had. Again, it was the drugs, it was the lack of shopping to meet daily needs, some concerns about pricing structures on recreational activities and the way that that's more expensive with the neighboring communities. One of the comments that I thought was interesting that got brought up was about had to do with the job mix and a lot of the city having a lot of jobs that didn't pay higher wages, and that kind of came out in the trends analysis when I looked at the trends, and when you compare the proportion of jobs in the community, while you've got some fairly good numbers in terms of construction, manufacturing, sales. When you look at service jobs, the percentage of jobs in the service sector are like 30% is a really high number, and that was like double the average for the state. I assume that has to do with the being a little bit more of a seasonal economy, but those jobs obviously don't pay well, or some of them don't. And then we were underrepresented in terms of management professional jobs. So that jumped out at me a little bit. A few of those comments. So, like I said, I think I've distilled most of these comments into the key issues memo, but I'll continue to look through here. There were some comments in here about roads, road conditions, some comments about lighting on Fulton Street or the timing of the lights. There was a comment about the railroad and mentioned something about a city should look at a quiet zone. So there were some comments on infrastructure. You can jump to question 8 if you're doing that, Justin. Please indicate whether you agree or disagree with the following statements. I thought these were pretty positive. I always like to ask these questions because people like to complain, but then, we asked whether they agreed or disagreed with these statements. I feel safe in my neighborhood. That was almost 90%. My neighborhood is walkable, 82%. My neighborhood is bike friendly, 2/3, 66%. I know many of my neighbors, 68, 69%. So I saw it in general, those looked like pretty good results. And then we asked people to share specific comments about their neighborhood. So I asked people to let us know kind of where they were, where they had specific comments, so we can kind of go through later and look at where some of these specific, comments are addressed to. But there's a lot of stuff in here on infrastructure and streets. Lighting came up. Concern about rental properties. We were talking about earlier today here with Angie. Traffic. Some of the key kind of issues that came up under that section there. Next question was question 10. Please indicate if you agree or disagree with the following statements. So this was getting at transportation. A lot of the people who we asked about public transit meets my needs. Half the people said that was not applicable. About 20% agreed, but a quarter of the folks said disagree. So that's a pretty significant number. About half the people agreed that more on-street bike lanes are needed, and over half, 57%, indicated more off-street bicycle pedestrian trails are needed. And then we asked people to do some open-ended comments on transportation needs. There was a lot of comments on trails and connectivity. There were quite a few comments on public transit and people bringing up the idea of having some type of trolley or bus, to kind of get people around the community back and forth. I'm sure this is something you guys have talked about for years and years. Kind of just skim over that. Well, you asked people housing, question 12. I haven't really analyzed all this data yet. What is your maximum monthly mortgage payment or rent you consider to be affordable? It's kind of all over the map here. So that'll be interesting to I got to organize that a little bit more. A lot of times we see in a lot of communities I work with, we see there's oftentimes an unmet demand for higher end housing in the community. So when you look at some of these numbers, you do see people talk about, 2,000, 3,000, that they can afford a fair amount of money for a rent or a mortgage. And we asked people on question 13 a series of questions, whether you agree or disagree with each of the following statements about housing. And I don't know that I'll go through each one of those, but more single-family homes were needed. 46% of the people said that. More multifamily apartments are needed. I guess somewhat not surprisingly, when most of the people answering the survey are homeowners. 40% of them disagreed. 34% didn't have an opinion. Only 25% said they felt more multifamily was needed. About a third of or quarter of the people said more condos are needed. 32% said more townhomes. A lot of people really talked about more housing for the elderly and disabled. So about 50% of the people agreed with that statement. More housing is needed for elderly and disabled. 30% had no opinion and only 20% disagreed. 30% agreed with the statement. More housing is needed in the downtown. And I thought it was interesting. Over 30% said more multi-generational housing options are needed. And that seems to be a trend in a lot of areas. People are going back to the old ways of living together. Question 14, would you consider living in downtown Waupaca? I always like to ask this question because we're always trying to get more people to live downtown to support downtown businesses. So about a third of the people said yes, which I think is pretty good. That's we have a pretty good sample size, and that's includes a lot of people who don't live in the city and the surrounding areas. So that's I think a pretty significant figure. And then in the comments, people talk about the amenities and the things that they would like about living in the city, and then they list some of the downsides or things that they would find less desirable in terms of living downtown. But there seemed to be quite a bit of interest in that, which was good. Question 15, we asked people to just open up and get their 2 cents in on Fulton Street with Kmart and Shopko leaving. What other land uses would you see as desirable within the corridor? I need to go through it and kind of aggregate this a little bit better, but I'd say the biggest one was Walmart, Target, Kohl's, larger, some sort of general, GAFO or general merchandise. Somebody mentioned Meijer. A lot of those. There was also some interesting comments that I thought were, I think some of those came out of the visioning session we did, but some people talked about some other activity centers over there, roller rink, ice skating rink, outdoor dining, more restaurants. Several people brought up the idea of putting that food pantry over at the Kmart site instead of at the the site that they purchased, an aquatic center, hotel. A lot of, but I think probably the biggest thing was a Target or a Walmart. Let's see here. 16. Have you had phone or in-person interaction with any city employee in the last 12 months? About 2/3 of the folks said yes. I thought these results were actually pretty good. Question 17. Please rate your overall impression of city staff based on your recent contact. So if you took very professional or extremely professional, you added those up, you're at about 75% indicated that their impression was very or extremely professional. Their interaction, just 22% said somewhat professional, and only really, I guess, 10% said not at all professional or not so professional. So that's kind of come out as a little bit of a issue in some of the open-ended comments, but in terms of that result, I mean, probably shows some room for improvement, but it kind of balances out some of the negative Nancy comments. And then this last question, I'm not really going to get into too much. This was more for the strategic plan, and Wally and Aaron wanted to stick this in here. Question 18, the city services. Please rate the importance and quality of the following city services.
Pre-season starts.
How did the Yeah, so some of these, so question, the second part of that, first part is how important it is, and the second part is rank the quality. It looks like Parks and Trails was up there, Water and Sewer Utilities was up there, Police Services were up there, Fire was up there, Emergency was up there. What was low? Planning and Land Use, right? My department was down at the, down a little bit lower in terms of the quality. So we'll have to pick that apart a little bit further. But overall, I don't know. I thought overall those results seemed pretty positive to me. I mean, if you added up the number of people that said that the quality of those services is good or excellent, it's in the 70 or 80%. And then we had some open-ended comments on quality of life, quality of city services. So there's some good stuff in here. I hope you guys will take the chance to read through some of these comments. Oftentimes when I'm trying to digest a lot of these, I'll go through and organize these into some buckets. But oftentimes I like to go to the ones where somebody wrote like a whole paragraph, because it kind of shows that they gave it some thought. It wasn't just a 1 second. So I think there's some good comments in here that we could mine for maybe some strategies or action items to include in the comp plan. Did anybody else have any other comments or observations on some of the survey results? I'm sure you probably spent the weekend reading through every page of that PDF. No, I know the mayor did.
Absolutely.
Can you just remind us again, Andrew, who you sent these out to?
Sure. So,
General.
yeah, so we, based on the feedback we got at that last meeting, we reduced the number of questions down a lot, which was great feedback because the response rate for this was pretty high. The number of people that started it and completed it was very high, and we got a pretty good turnout. I think had we not done that, it was way too long. So that was good feedback. We promoted this when we did the January 6th visioning workshop. We sent this out through the Park and Rec department, their email list, newsletter list. Obviously, that's probably why we got a lot of input from the surrounding communities. We did some news releases. I believe Angie wrote about it in the newspaper. We posted it on the front page of the website. I sent it out to the chamber for distribution a couple times. And I think it was, and then we did make some paper copies available up front, and a few people did use the paper copies. So again, that was a good comment that one of you provided last time. I think that's about it. Yeah. So what I was hoping to do, if I could, if you guys would entertain me a little bit here, is just if you go to this memo, this little one-page memo, I was hoping I might get a little bit of input from you all.
What page are you on, Andrew?
It's the memo, so it's a separate document, comprehensive plan, key issues and opportunities memo. It's not the trends report. It's
You know if it's at the beginning or the end?
I'm guessing it's at the beginning, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, is that all? That's all zipped into one document. There we go.
This here?
Yeah. Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind, just scroll down so we can see the bulleted list of items. And actually, if you go a little bit further, it kind of extends onto the next page. Whoops. Yep. Maybe you can't do that. Okay. Well, so in addition, I was reviewing the survey results in a little bit more depth, and I did add a few things to this list that I think maybe I missed. One of them was collaboration with like intergovernmental collaboration with surrounding towns, the school district, et cetera. I added that. housing stock. I didn't, one of the key issues I think was the older age of the housing stock and maintenance of housing and the balance between rental and occupied. So I included a little key issue related to housing. I expanded a little bit more on the healthcare requirements. There's a concern or an issue about staffing levels and turnover and then the level of service in the future and the ability of Waupaca to maintain the level of service that it currently has. And that actually came out in multiple areas, including with the stakeholder interview we did with the gentleman from Theta Care. I mean, he indicated that the trend was going to more telemedicine, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but he also mentioned a figure. I think he said you had 126 births at the hospital last year. So you go, which he said was fine. They don't have any plans to get rid of their neonatal unit or whatever you call that. But he said, there's certain benchmarks. If you don't have enough people being born, you can't support those kind of services. So I think there's some healthcare benchmarks or requirements. So healthcare and the level of service was an issue that was brought up. Let's see. And then somebody mentioned kind of strengthening Waupaca's identity, to wanting to be known for something. So I put in a little bullet on that as an opportunity as well. So based on those, so I'm curious if you guys, in looking at those bulleted issues and opportunities, have I missed anything? Probably, maybe that.
I don't know if you've missed anything, Andrew, but I would say that third bullet point is a definite strength of the community. We have Waupaca Foundry, we have Presto Products, we have Gusmer Enterprises. In all three of those, Falks Brothers, how could I forget about them? Large employers that care very much about this community. Mm-hmm. You can see that in the things that they do and they promote.
Yeah.
So I think that's a definite strength.
It's a good point. And I was reading through here. I think most of these are kind of issues or negative things. So I'll throw a few more positive in here too. Thank you for, if there's a few more kind of assets or opportunities here. Yeah, I guess the opportunity there is to continue to embrace or support those manufacturers and large employers that are committed to the community. That's a good point. So then, if you go to that next page, Justin, and you can shrink that down just a little bit so we can get them all on one page. The goals and objectives, yeah. All right, yeah, that should do it. I think there's 10. So these are really draft goals. So what I was hoping to do is just get a little bit of discussion, see if you think these goals make sense to you, or where they need to get improved or added to. And then what we'll do as we're going through this comprehensive plan, each month we're going to be introducing a chapter. We'll have a few goals, and then the way I'd like to organize this is, so each chapter will have 1 or 2 goals, and then underneath those goals we'll have a set of strategies. There may be 5 or 7 strategies, and then we'll have a discussion of each of those strategies with some action items. So it's kind of going a little bit, the plan will look a little different than the plan you have right now. You've got vision statements and goals and objectives and policies and actions and strategies. It's just too much. It's too complicated. I can't even understand it. So I wanted to just make this a little simpler, say goals. We're going to have goals for each of these areas, and then we're going to come up with some strategies, how to address the goals, how to achieve those goals, and then we'll have some more specific action items under each of them. So it'll look a little bit more of like a strategic plan and a little less kind of wordy. So any thoughts? I did add one more goal to this, number 11. I put in a goal, diversify and strengthen the local economy to support a mix of blue and white collar jobs. That was, and again, the wording isn't necessarily perfect on that, but I thought, diversifying and kind of building off of the strengths of the economy, which probably are the large manufacturing base, but then also thinking about the future and business diversification, and in particular some of those professional management type of jobs or workforce. Looking at the potential to capture some of those highly educated people that might want to live in a amenity-rich area like Waupaca, and they can bring their jobs with them. They can bring their businesses with them.
Andrew, other than the Planning Commission, who have you already shared all the information in the survey, or are you planning to share it with?
So we've put the results of the survey up on the website.
Now, when you say results, you just mean the graphs, I assume? Not all are all the comments?
I put I just put basically the PDF of all of the comments. I took off the last section where it asked people to leave their name and their email if they wanted to receive input. But I posted that up there. If you guys have a concern about that, we could certainly take it off. So the raw results are up there, and then as we go through this process, I'll continue to post, these memos and trends and information up there. But what I plan to do here in the next week is to do a little newsletter. Part of the plan was every other month as we get into this to do a newsletter to share the results back. So we have a lot of people. I'm not exactly sure how many, but probably between close to 200 people that have signed up to receive email newsletter updates. So once I get that news, I'll do a newsletter, which will just be maybe 2 or 3 pages that'll summarize some of the key findings of the survey, and then that'll get sent out to that list, and then I'll send that out to the newspaper, back to the chamber, and we'll try to push that out to say, this is what we heard, and these are our draft goals. Now we're moving forward, just to keep people engaged a little bit in the process, or aware of where we are in the process. So these goals, any comments on these? Do you think any of these resonate with you or don't resonate? Or
I got a question. So you have these 10, 11 goals.
Yep.
The next step, you're going to provide kind of the steps to achieve these goals?
Yeah, so we're going to, over the next several months, rest of the year really, so each month you'll get a draft of one of these chapters, housing, transportation, whatever the chapter is, and then we'll have, I'm just going to, based on the input and working with staff, right, and people that work on this stuff day to day, I'll draft those chapters, and we'll basically have I'd like to have 1 or 2 goals per chapter, and then, like I said, maybe 5 or 7 strategies, or however many strategies, and then we'll have a little discussion of those strategies with some action items, so you'll get a full chapter right before the next upcoming meeting. I think we're going to do housing first, so you have an opportunity to review that, discuss it. We'll have 2 kicks at the can. My thought is we'll bring it forward. We'll have some discussion. I'll try to get you guys to share your input or thoughts on it, and then the next month we'll come back with a new chapter. We'll spend a little bit of time on the new chapter introducing it, and then you'll get kind of a second kick at the can of like the housing. You'll get a second kick at the can. You've had a couple months to kind of look at it, noodle at it, maybe ask some questions, and then we'll work through we'll work through that whole process together, and then we'll have towards the end here we'll have a couple like open public workshops or public open houses where we'll share the plan and get any last minute feedback. But I'm really hoping that this can. I'm trying to do this in such a way that it can really help mesh with the strategic plan, and we can create kind of a nice framework here to align some of the different things that the city's working on. It's also, I think, can be useful document for communicating and with other partners in the community, getting departments and staff kind of aligned around what the priorities of the community are. Yeah. And I'm just kind of relying on you guys since we're sort of fast tracking this. Sometimes we will do like, a citizen advisory committee or a stakeholder advisory committee or a planning, ad hoc committee that kind of basically puts the plan together, and then they just bring it to plan commission at the end, and then you guys look at it and say, okay, fine. But we kind of, in the interest of time and not over planning people to death, because I think you've been doing a lot of planning recently, we just decided to use you guys as kind of the main sounding board for this process. And so feel free to hit me up anytime if you've got thoughts on any of this stuff. Feel free to reach out to me, and we will come back with, like I said, I think we're going to dive into the housing. I think it's going to be the first chapter.
Yeah, I like the breaking it down basically, and housing obviously is on the forefront for us. Especially with the concept of apartment buildings and rental properties versus single-family homes, and what the direction is that the community is really going in. So I think that's a good place to start, and hopefully we'll be able to tweak it as we move through that. So
Yeah, I'd like to focus on the housing, and then also I think that Fulton Street corridor, I know there seems to be, those are the ones that I'd like to kind of focus on to make sure we have enough time to work through them. Some of the other ones are a little more esoteric and, wastewater and water. It's, there's not
Boring stuff.
the boring stuff. No, it's important stuff, but it's not the type of stuff where, you want the general public to give you direction on, how much cadmium to add to your water, treatment plant.
yeah, it will be interesting, especially when we get to the Fulton Street corridor, especially on people's thoughts. I mean, obviously we've been pressing that for quite a while now, that is not leading the charge, but ultimately that's what this discussion is all about, is that, the Fulton Street has really proven to us that times are changing, and we need to figure out how to change with them. So
Yeah. The other thing, and going along with that, Mayor, and I know when we'll get into it more, is so many of the comments as I read through here about the commercial aspect of West Fulton Street, we have no control over. The companies that have disappeared are companies that are nationally disappearing. They're not disappearing in Waupaca, disappearing off the grid everywhere. And you travel around and see empty shop goes and empty Kmarts, and even now with Pizza Hut. Those decisions we have no control over, and people keep saying, well, gee, how come we lost them? Well, we don't know why, other than unfortunately, we're just targeted as one of those places that no longer are going to have those stores. So, not that we did anything,
And
continue to be economically, one of your goals here is to be economically friendly, and that's great. I think we've always been that. But
Yeah,
some things are out of our control.
Yeah, I would agree to that to an extent. I do think, going through this process, getting some goals and strategies in place, digging into some of the revisiting. You had that market study done a few years ago. I'd like to go back and revisit that a little bit. I think you have an opportunity in the next year or two to make a run at getting something else in there. But it's probably not going to be easy. But I think you've got a good story to tell. I mean, I think if we look at the trade area and a lot of the national retailers, they don't necessarily know how, they've got their own data and analytics, but I mean, I think we need to wrap our arms a little bit around the impact of the tourism and the leisure market and quantify that a little bit. I've heard people throw out numbers, but I don't know exactly where they're coming from. But I think if we could do a little bit better job quantifying the impact of the seasonal market here, we may be able to, that could help attract, a larger retailer. And then looking at, I don't know what, we need to also look at, I know Walmart's got a store in New London. I don't believe it's one of the larger ones. I think it's one of the smaller ones. I don't know how it's doing. New London's had challenges as well. So I don't know that it's completely out of the realm of possibility that you could land one of these larger retailers here, but it's definitely not going to be easy. So I'd like to take a look at that. There's the kind of the place where people go and try to schmooze the real estate managers for those types of businesses. It's at a International Council of Shopping Centers, and they do an annual conference every year. But I think the first step is kind of getting a strategy in place and coming up with some better numbers, and then maybe, it's a long shot, but then there certainly are some things we could do to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of trying to get a retailer back in there. But we need to understand first off what the market is, and then also what some of the space requirements are. I don't know if that Kmart site is really big enough. I don't know, the Shopko site, there may need to be some land acquisition or some assembly or something that happens, to bring in. But, on the positive side, you have a lot of these national brands on Fulton Street, and you've got some more, you had the Pizza Hut closed, but you've got Dunkin' Donuts, you've got other things in the works. And usually those retailers all like to, they always like to say retailers are like sheep, they flock together. So the fact that you have those national brands there, means that, and you've got pretty good traffic volumes on Highway 10, and you've got a large seasonal market, so you've got some strengths there. It's not like it's not like we're trying to do this in Manawa or something. So I think it's possible, but it's maybe a little bit of a long shot. So we need to drill down to that and look at that a little bit closer. And I got a question for you, Justin. Is Fulton Street, that's under state jurisdiction from
It's state
portion
highway.
of it?
Yeah, it's State Highway 49/54 from Highway 10 to Harrison Street.
Is that the top? Is that by Cherney's? Or where's Harrison Street?
Harrison Street is halfway down the hill.
As if you're going to Iowa.
As if you go to Iowa. Okay.
Yeah, Highway
okay.
49.
So they have jurisdiction over Main. No.
No, we have jurisdiction for maintenance because it's defined as a connecting highway in the DOT system. So from Highway 10 to Joanne Lane is DOT, but past that is City of Waupaca.
Okay. Joanne Lane, is that one of the
Right
cross
next
streets?
The old Pizza Hut.
Okay. So they just do that first little section. They do the maintenance on that.
Yep, those signals that were just placed at the base of 10 ramps there, those were put in by the DOT and funded and maintained by the DOT.
Is the balance of that street you guys do the maintenance on, but does the DOT own it? Do they?
The rest of the balance.
The rest of that stretch from Jones to Harrison, or
We're on the hook for maintaining it. Yes.
okay, but as far as configuration, and if you were to reconstruct or redo that, any
That
portions
would
of that?
be if we wanted to reconstruct Fulton Street, they would they would pretty much lead the charge. on
Okay,
that.
same with like the traffic impact analysis with Cherney or something. They're gonna be able to dictate the drive curb cuts and
They would
addi-
provide, okay, so the Cherney site is a good spot to talk about. They would provide guidance, but they would leave ultimately the decision up to us.
Okay.
If we wanted to, say, adjust lanes or change the median in the corridor more to the west where, say, like Culver's and Aldi is, they would definitely want to know what's going on, see design plans, and have comments on those. But if we funded that type of project, well, they would allow us to do that as long as it met their design standards.
Okay.
So
And will they, and the city maintains that stretch of roadway, but the DOT still owns it, so if and
Yes.
when it comes time to reconstruct that, that's on their
That would be
nickel.
them.
Okay. Right. All righty. I think that's all.
Okay,
All I got.
anything as far as on the building permits and nuisances or anything like that?
I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't look too closely at that, so.
Yeah, I did, and I don't know that there's nothing really big out there or new or unusual that I can see. But I just didn't know if you had any specific things.
No, I didn't, Mayor. I think you guys are aware that Jeff Sanders is now handling a lot of the zoning and permitting, and I think that switchover just started this week. So
Right. Right.
you may be seeing him here in the future. All right. Well, thanks for humoring me with that. And like I said, if you've got any more thoughts on goals or strategies on any of these issues, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, anybody have anything else for the good of the meeting tonight? Need a motion to adjourn then.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Fair, that we adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? We are adjourned at 6:18 PM.